Greetings, this is Warrior King, and the time has come for the lions and the lioness to tell their own story. This is the lion's voice. Give thanks and praise for the wonderful blessing that's been poured on me. Give thanks and praise. Jah use I as an instrument to set the people free. Jah give her the powers to chant. Jah give her the powers to chant. Ras Tafari, the lion's voice.
What are you waiting for? Come together, calling from near and far. Know who you are. What are you waiting for? Rally up, it takes the dust. What are you waiting for? Ancestors paved the way for us. Yes, I am Ketis Oyonde, asking, what are you waiting for to come together? The time has come for the lions to tell our own story. This is the lion's voice.
Yes, chat people, this is Michael Shamaya representing. I will say, hear the lion voice, saying it is time for the lions and the lionesses to tell their own story. King David killed Goliath with a stone, we original dread.
The time has come for the lioness to tell her own story.
The time has come for lions to tell their own story. Yes, you're listening to Lion's Voice. I is Dejazmatch hailing from the island of St. Croix. Yeah, I'm bringing it to Rastafari vibes. Can you feel it? Rastafari. Babylon born when Rasta come together. Can you feel it? Rastafari, because Babylon done when I and I come together. Look how we live together, look how we work together, Oh, Babylon done when Rasta come together. Haile, Rastafari, His Majesty and Empress men and blessed. Yeah man, hailing from St. Croix, Rastafari, I hear you.
Aye.
The fittest of the fittest shall survive. My people, open your eyes. Wake up. Blessed love, this is Queen Omega, representing for all lions and lionesses. With the lion's voice, we come to tell our story. Rastafari, live it. Hey, the lion's voice, Rastafari.
Yo, this is Zelle, representing for Ras Kasata and the whole lion voice family. Now listen, this is the realest thing. Him closer to me than a brother. Him a me Jamie, I tell him I'm a lion. Me I go tell you how me feel, me I go keep it real. Me not go wait till me lay down on the mark. Lion voice never talk bad about me yet. Him realness me can't forget. Cause when I game time, him never bench me. Him never rise up against me yet. No, the friendship connect. It's funny how we can talk in front of a million people and never yet drop no catch. So a loyalty till death. Lion voice, and Selassie representing. Up.
Lion voice.
Amina, the time has come for the lioness to tell our own story. No surrender, no retreat, we are Jaja soldier. Rougher than the streets, tougher than a boulder. Bigging up Lamb's voice. Now put it, I Jollifer said that.
Greetings, this is Rashilo. The time has come for the lions to tell their own story. See? This is the lion's voice. Keep it locked, right, sir? Rashilo said that. Are you satisfied? Wipe those tears from your eyes. I'm all alone, still you thought I was telling a lie. This is the lion's voice. Keep it locked, right, sir?
I will never stop, hail the Most High, and I will never stop, call Rastafari. Blessed love, this is Kushite representing for the Lion's Voice. We are here to tell our own story, Rastafari.
Yeah, David Dread of Steel Pulse, and I'm saying hail to the lion voice because it's time that the lion have its voice, have its own story. Says I'm stepping out here, hear me now. Yeah, the lion's voice. Raw.
Well, lion voice, tell them that's the people first choice. Lion voice, make the lioness them feel nice. Lion voice, with the lion cubs we sacrifice. Lion voice, got to show the people them the life. Lion voice.
Jano, I'm so hungry, bro. I haven't eaten all day. Like, my head started to hurt me too. Like, what more could I eat right now?
What about a city samosa? Get your samosa, a fusion of Indian, Jamaican, and African culture. City samosas, the best samosas in the city.
Them could never conquer the mountains. Thousands of years and counting. Ethiopia rise again unto the world. Now we are announcing. Them a plan for war, we a plan for peace. And now we see them wanna go dismantle the base. When the trumpet sound and the violence cease, how we say one go build up the cities. Well, them a plan for war, we a plan for peace. And now we see them wanna go dismantle the base. Rastafari crown as the Prince of Peace. Him tell the youths them fi build up them countries. Well, solar energy that them a see. The whole city powered by the sun's energy. The road them make out of hemp and concrete. Neighborhoods full of fruit trees that taste sweet. The youths put down them guns, them harvest and a reap. The beautiful gardens will line every street. Tired of the bloodshed, them done with the beef. Not even animals for that, them burn out the meat. Where people say Haile Selassie, I see Nile. When they see say him a treat the dirt like a child. Peace on earth from the banks of the Nile. That's why we giving thanks in style. Sister Babylon a weapon, them a stockpile. Babylon a wicked, kill them brother and smile. Lion, Babylon a reptile. Them a plant fish, shed blood, we got plans for the soil. Them a plan for war, we a plan for peace. And now we see them wanna go dismantle the base. When the trumpet sound and the violence cease, how we say one go build up the cities. Well, them a plan for war, we a plan for peace. And now we see them wanna go dismantle the base. Rastafari crown as the Prince of Peace. Him tell the youths them fi build up them countries. No more gullies, proper sanitation. Proper toilets with proper filtration. Clean water for the youths them fi use. Our sons and daughters safe, no more child abuse. Africa arise, read it in the news. On the day when Rastafari ready, wicked have fi move. 3D printing alongside hem shoes. Herb get legal. Well, front to us a son was born and a child was given.
I want to ask you a question. Have you got your book? Haile Selassie's Ethiopia Volume 1, The Rise of the Priest Warrior King. I've read the book in its entirety, and I must say it's very inspirational, very informative, and very historical, right?
Them call him Ras Tafari. When he was born, rain fall from sky. Them call him Rastafari. When he was grown in airplanes he fly. They call him Rastafari. Lion break the chain, weep not, don't cry. Them call him Rastafari. Read the Revelation chapter 5 verse 5. Then born near the city of Harar, the inspiration for Bob Marley's guitar. People crowd him like some big superstar. It no matter if England. Greetings in that divine name of His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I the First. Glory and honor in the name of His chosen Queen, Empress Waziri Menen. My name is Kwasi Bonsu, aka DejazmatchKwasi, aka Ras Kwasi, aka the Reading Ras, aka the Pan-African Happy Man, creative industry attorney. I'm an author, I'm an artist, I'm an actionist, and right now I am the host of the Lion Talk Live. Welcome to Lion Talk Live and welcome to the Lion Voice Network, where the lions are telling our own story. Tonight we have a legendary episode. One of these episodes, from time to time, every episode is historic because we only reason with the workers in the vineyard on this platform. But tonight we have one of the pioneers, and these are the episodes that I, personally full joy because I am like a student going to class. I'm going to be like a student going to class. Many of the items know I am a licensed attorney, but tonight we have one of the original Rastafari attorneys, a name that I heard echoed, while I was at law school. These were the aspirations I had, and I can say I'm just coming off of a reasoning of Rastafari attorneys, and I am so joyful that the vision I had when I was a young law student attending Howard University, that now I'm living in the time where it's being fulfilled, where Rastafari attorneys are coming together from over land and sea to discuss Rastafari rights, to discuss strategy. It's such a joy to be a part of it. And this elder statesman that we have tonight, he's going to give us serious history. If you have not seen our episode with Ras Kabinda from Dominica, the legend of Desmond Trotter is the name of the episode. I heard about a Ras that was incarcerated for murder and locked up, and the hurricane came and blew down the jail and all of these things, and he went to Ethiopia, and I interviewed that Brethren Ras Kabinda. We found out that the hurricane didn't blow him out of jail. He escaped jail before the hurricane, but the hurricane did come and flatten the jail. So, we get to hear the lion own story. But one of the things that we learned on that episode was a guerrilla war that was waged between Rastafari and the government of Dominica. We learned about people actually losing their lives, gunshot, killing people in Dominica. So this elder lived through those occurrences. So tonight is one of them nights where you have to get your ital snacks. Make sure your meditation is right, because we're going to go deep into some history of the Caribbean, of Dominica. But you know that I'm also a forward-thinking Ras. I am the reading Ras. And all of the guests that we bring forward, we want to get a vision of where we're going. We call it the Golden Age. I said I'm not gonna call it the Golden Age anymore because I saw something that the Masonic orders like to use the Golden Age terminology, and I don't want no confusion. Say that we are dealing with, because what the Masons them dealing with respectfully is not what I dealing with. You know what I mean? In terms of forward vision. No disrespect to the Masonic ones them, you know, they are them have your way, we agree to disagree. I heal Haile Selassie the first Kadamawi, the Musa Nagasi, Alember, Hana Nacho, alright? So I don't call it the golden age anymore. I'm playing with the golden era, maybe, because I like the gold motif because of the price of gold escalating on the international market and African countries nationalizing their gold reserves, creating vast wealth, billions of dollars being created in the African countries right now, because they are taking control of their natural resources. So literally is a golden era, you know. However, I always like the building of Zion. Zion also kind of get kind of sketchy because you have what's happening there in the Middle East. So we want to call it Sion, you know, which is the Ethiopian Zion. It's spelled Tsion, the building of Sion. And same thing, which means paradise, you know, this heavenly, heaven on earth scenario. If that's not our goal, then what are we doing? Are we just here for reggae concerts and we wave two flags? No, we have a purpose. We are called, and I hope if you're a regular watcher of this channel, you see Rastafari is not just artists. We have professionals from all over the spectrum. We've had doctorate degrees among doctorate degrees, engineers, mathematicians, you name it. We're doing our Rastafari and STEM series right now, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, because I want to demonstrate to the global family that we're not short of human resource right now. What we need to do is to articulate a clear vision, formulate a clear plan, execute the plan. Part of that plan, of course, starts with building an economic base, and you know, that is one of the major focuses of the channel, is trying to even stabilize this channel as a pillar within Rastafari independent non-aligned media. I want to big up all of the Lion Pride on Patreon. I see some of them in the comments. We have people who are already supporting us monthly, and without these people, it wouldn't make sense. We wouldn't be able to livicate the time. So we're asking the global family, if you can contribute $10, $5 a month, join our Patreon, the Lion Pride on Patreon. We are a community. We're tight-knit. We're building each other. We have regular town hall meetings now. The last town hall meeting was very airy. And you can join our Patreon for free as well and watch the town hall meetings if you want to kind of see the energy. We're building it for serious Rastafari people, because one of the things I learned doing the channel is that we have a lot of hobbyists, you know what I mean? Nothing no wrong with that, you know, because we deal with love. But a lot of people who say Rastafari or Rasta, they're hobbyists. They're weekend, wave a flag, go a reggae show, but they're not really trying to leave their comfort of what they're doing on the day-to-day. They're not Armageddon preparation. And let me just say, because we here also said that what was happening in the Middle East, that war would break out in Iran, we were proven correct. We said that early. We have the receipts, as the young people say, on the channel. We said that was going to happen. And I'm going to be doing an episode this Saturday called The Tender Mercies, because a lot of people think that that conflict is finished. What you see with the starts and the stops, the COVID, the wars, all of these things, the lockdown, starts and stops in terms of Armageddon. These are the tender mercies, because these are letting us know to prepare. So I don't want us to get comfortable because the global supply shipping and these things, and they didn't close the Straits of Hormuz. They were threatening. That was a headline. I remember I did a whole episode on the Straits of Hormuz and why they're important to the global supply chain. And let me big up Lion Pride on Patreon member Freeway the Dread. He's a trucker
Right now in the Patreon, we have 3 Rastafari truckers. We're reasoning about establishing a truck Rastafari trucking association. Freeway the Dread is preparing to come on the platform to talk about the global supply chain. These are the true conversations we have to be having right now, family. If everything locked down as Rastafari in the Pan-African community, can we supply ourselves with food, clothes, and shelter? What is our plan if government services fail? We are a peculiar people. Are we depending on others? And we come from the tradition of Marcus Garvey, or do we have an independent plan regionally, internationally, for what happens to us as a people? These are the things that we're talking about in the Patreon. We're organizing across land and sea. So big up all of those monthly subscribers. And again, if you're a serious Rastafari, Pan-African, and you want to build with other like-minded, serious people, then join us in the Patreon. Also, we just launched the program with the Lalabella Institute. We are creating a safe space for single brethren and sistren. Because this is Armageddon, this is the time for you to couple up right now. This is not a time to be a lone lion or lioness. It's a time to lock in with someone, get ready to build. 2 incomes are better than 1. What's your repatriation plan? Are you building? Are you have access to food and water and running water close by? If the city lock off and the trucks start coming in and the grocery store shelves are empty, what's your plan? So this is the time to lock in with someone, and a lot of Rastas are in areas, small towns. They may be the only Rastafari person there. So we're opening the Patreon for single brethren and sistren. They can meet each other over land and sea, and prayerfully, we have the Lalabella Institute. They have a program, a courtship program that you can go into to see if there's compatibility. It's a whole, things that help to see if you are the same purpose, same frequency. So we are being very purposeful in terms of the nation building, and it starts with family. So we are providing that safe space. So, what does that look like in our town hall meetings? We say, are you in a relationship? Are you single? When you do your introduction, if someone is interested, they can reach out to the eye. There's no pressure. It's not like we're coming at you in the town hall and say, well, you know what I mean? It's nothing like that. We're just allowing brethren, and then you get to see people interact over the months and the town hall, and you can see is this a person that shares my interests. We have members that do presentations. We'll have special guests that will come in as well. We're building, you know what I mean? And this platform becomes their platform as well. So you'll be meeting a lot of our Patreon members here. So don't fret yourself. This is something historic that we're building here, and we give thanks for each and every one of the items who have joined us on this journey, because it's not an easy road and hard times are coming ahead, family. I don't want I get complacent. Remember, so we sing about the Armageddon and we warn the nation. Even One Love, which is the song of the century, what is it talking about? The holy Armageddon. And right now what's happening is that the baby boomers want to see this prophecy fulfilled before they check out of the earth. So they're pushing this war, and believe they're going to, self-fulfill their prophecy and bring down terrible disaster upon the earth. So this is a preparation time. We big up all of our Action Lion Pride, Ubuntu Lion Pride. There's so many ways you can plug in with this movement. And also, not just remember that there are other Rastafari platforms. So I don't want the item just support I want the item support the guests when we ask the guests to share information. I want the item to also support other platforms. Honorable Priest Isaac, you know what I mean? The Tiger's Nest. We're reasoning. We're going to have the brethren on, and I'm going to be treading on the Tiger's Nest at some point. This is a unity time. This is a global uprising. Big up Ija Stars. We've had Ija Stars on the platform. Big up Rastafari TV. All of these platforms need support. iYard Radio, we have our elders like Muta Baruka, so many more, you know what I mean? So, and we'll be bringing all these ones forward. And we want to just create this time to circle the wagon, so to speak, as Rastafari, serious people. And if you're a hobbyist and you just like to watch and you like reggae music, you're welcome to watch and to continue. But I sound the trumpet for the serious ones, the Gideon soldiers. They them know who them are. It's time to rise. It's time to activate. It's time to invest your currency. Currency is frequency. You know what I mean? Currency make the thing run, movement move. So we got to invest the currency, rise up. The media is very crucial. You know what I mean? The media piece is very crucial. All right, I see our elder has joined us. We're going to get ready to bring forward our elder. Legendary tonight, family. This is one. Again, if you don't have your ITAL snacks, go get your ITAL snacks, family. This one is so mighty. Big up all of our sponsors. I have to big up Ras Tafari, Frontline Books Publishing. Make sure you support the elder, buy the physical books. I am the reading Ras. You see the merchandise, the Ras reading. You know what I mean? Physical books. They can launch an EMP missile and knock out the electricity grid, internet crash. They can jam GPS. We're looking at these things in modern war, So we got to have our physical books, our Trueberry, because you never know what can happen. And as you know, if you do research, serious research, not everything is online, A lot of books that have been written, well researched, they're not online, and if they are, they're behind the paywall. So make sure you have your own collection of physical books. You see behind I have this whole row is just His Majesty, you know what I mean? So make sure that you have your physical books. It's crucial. And support Frontline Publishing, our brother Sekou Tafari. Big up Ras Lage, Ramia King Design. Big up Wally Kings Live. Big up all of the ones them, you know what I mean, who, again, this is not easy. I have a full-time job. I want to be full-time doing this work for the family, traveling around the place, showing the works, and we'll get there. But I couldn't even do the level that I'm doing now if it wasn't for the support. So I want to be grateful. We're waiting for our elder to come in. We're going through some technical difficulties, so we're going to bring him up shortly. But until then, let me just see who's here with us in the chat. Lion Pride family. Yes, give thanks. We have Diana, Joseph, greetings. Big up my awesome family, Mr. Shilling. Okay, I told you we have a legend tonight, family. Tuned in. Okay, Larak, that sounds like it's straight out of Dominica. Rat's Life. This is Lion Pride on Patreon. Checking in. Big up yourself, King. All right, so I see our guest is ready. So please, without further ado, give us a warm welcome for our guest tonight, legendary attorney at law, Kasata Shillingford. Welcome.
Give thanks, Ian. Give thanks to your audience and for this opportunity. I don't get many opportunities to speak to the world at large from this little island rock, a very special place. It's a little place in the middle of the ocean, much smaller than Jamaica. Maypen, it has as much people as Maypen. So I give thanks for this technology, as you say, and I do believe that in this time that the media has always been Rasta platform. We use music, and remember a lot of elders didn't want reggae to happen, wanted to stay us in Bingi, and look what reggae done. Now reggae has gone on a certain level, but I agree with you. Media is the tool. In fact, it's more important than law now. You can probably do better with a good media program and an activism rather than taking a matter to court. So I agree with you in your opening that that is really the sword that we have, because it's word, sound, and power. And that's where we really coming from, with just truths and rights. And so it's the power of our dignity and the power of our thoughts that really is what we have. We have no weapon. And that is the consciousness. So that's just to big up, and to big up what you're doing, and even getting, a man's thoughts in some sort of format so that they have some regeneration for the next generation. So give thanks to you and what you're doing, and for that, and for everybody that has given their time to share with us in this evening.
I opened the show with saying that as a young attorney, I used to hear their name uttered, with names like Ras Miguel Lorne. There was an ex-sister who passed away. Her name is slipping eye. That was an attorney in Jamaica. But there were the few attorneys that their names were ringing, and the I name was one of them. So before we get into today's topic, I'm going to ask you to join a tradition here on the Lion Voice Network and step into our heretical time machine, and to take us to the moment of your birth and to share your origin story, how you entered this earth and the journey to Rastafari.
Well, the great Rasta saying that you don't become a Rasta, you were born Rasta. And in my in my 60-something years of living and reflecting, I must say I was maybe really born Rasta. I was born in the little island of Dominica, traditionally known as Wati Kubuli, a very important natural wonder of the world. And I was born to an excellent family. I give thanks, a mother and a father that, were married for over 60 years. In a upper middle class for Dominica family. My father, the name, as you can see, is a pretty pompous name, Shillingford. So he's from the gentry. My mother, not so much. My mother is a Carib woman, a black Carib mother, and a white father. So my grandfather, I have a white grandfather. And my story, I think that is what's important, is that I came up. My mother, having 7 children, her story is a story that's a great story that is reflected in 1,000 other Caribbean women, I think, particularly. In her mid-40s with 7 children, quite comfortable in Dominica. She was a major school teacher, very, very honored school teacher. She picked up with my father, her 7 children, and moved to New York. Pretty formidable thing, but there's many Jamaicans, St. Lucians, Vincentian, Trinidadian. I mean, it's a great tradition. And I mean, awesome. You move with your whole family and basically to give them an opportunity at education. So I came to the States, when I was quite young. I grew up in New York, really. I grew up in New York in the 60s and the 70s. A very energetic time in New York, and I lived the full New York life. We lived in Queens, and 11, 12, I was always, because of my mother, but I mean, even opposed to my brothers and sisters, I always loved to read. So I was reading. I was reading encyclopedias when I was 9 and 10. And I began reading quite interesting books when I was pretty young, 11, 12, Carlos Castaneda. Started smoking herb around then, 13. I was the last of 5 boys, and my mother, after doing that, and my father went to New York, and they were both working 2 jobs, just to keep us through. And so, of course, didn't have much time to think. So I was on the streets a lot. And, at 12, 13, I was going to the Black Panthers bookstore. We were in a lower middle class black neighborhood. Pretty well. Louis Armstrong lived there. Willie Mays, a great baseball player.
Wow.
And so, it was that kind of neighborhood. I did all the classic New York things, played stickball. I was good at school. I was just naturally good at school, but I was wayward. So I was thrown out of my primary school, in 8th grade. The priest and the brothers didn't want me there. I was too Disobedient, they thought. First, I was thrown out of my first class by a nun. Anyway, my last year of primary school, I was thrown out of school.
Wow.
And then, yeah, you know, anyway, I went to high school, a very good high school. My first high school is a major Catholic high school. By the way, my mother's a major Catholic.
Okay.
You know, like most everybody in the French Islands, at least. And so anyway,
How did they treat you in New York as an immigrant? Did you have the immigrant experience? Were you discriminated? Were you welcome? How did
No,
they?
Dominique, New York was an immigrant society. All in my block. My best friend when I got on my block was a Jamaican guy across the street, black guy. I always wanted to be darker, you know. I remember he used to say, "No, I want more coffee want more milk in my coffee." With my mother, you know, I want to be black like you, man. So I mean, and there was another Jamaican family down the street. There was guys from Bermuda. Then there were Cubans. Another Dominican family at the end of the block. So that there was no discrimination against immigrants at all, man. I mean, everybody knew this. Even now, I mean, you know, it's mostly foreigners that's in New York. I mean, even Trump's wife, you know, where was she? I mean, she's not no American. Dominance, you know. So the dynamism is that because I went to Catholic school, I had white friends, you know, good white friends.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, but they were good white friends, but I mean, they were in the mob, you know, their parents were literally, and I knew that. You know, I mean, his father taught me the lines of how to bet games. He used to bet every night over the dinner tables, like normal. And at that time, it wasn't legal. You had to have your bookies and all of that. So the point is, I had a New York experience, but I went to high school. I was pretty wayward. I was thrown out of a couple high schools. I went to 4 different high schools. The last one, and it was, you know, the last one I went to was called It was a special school for children who couldn't make it in the system. It's called Satellite Academy. And that was a really great experience for me because it allowed my true self to come out. I played a lawyer in there. One of the classes was a legal case to the whole semester. And you had to get evidence, and I was the lawyer in that. And the teacher was the judge. Some students were the jury. You know, she created so it was a creative school. I took yoga there for credit, and I've been doing yoga since. I actually taught a course that my last year there. Anyway, that was like at 17.
Does the I mind saying how old the I is?
Yeah, what am I now? I think I'm 68. I was born in 1958.
Okay, okay. The yoga, keeping the eye, give thanks. Go ahead.
Yeah. You know, you know, I really creative writing. I read great literature there. It was a lot of teachers too that wanted to be different, you know. I had a guy one of my main teachers, Sam, he was really a writer, a playwright, and he wanted to make money and things. We kept in touch with for years later. You know, all through my 20s and 30s, I kept in touch with his name, Sam. He went up to one of those states up north and got an old barn and created a play, you know, a whole theater, you know. So I had a very eclectic experience. And then at that time, I turned dread. I turned dread when I was about 16, 17, I didn't really know about Rasta. I mean, you know, reggae was just coming in. We were just hearing it, but I hadn't seen anybody. In fact, the first dread I saw was on the inside cover of the Burning album of Bob. It was a dreadlock with some goats. But I had already had dreads. I used to braid my hair. I never liked combing my hair, and I always liked the afro at that time. And one day I just made the girls used to like to braid my hair, and I used to like them to braid my hair. So all that was cool. And then I just unplaited it and left it. And then when I graduated, so my last year of high school, I kind of had dread. That was like in 74. Yeah, but, you know, Dominica was this hot pack. There was the dreads in Dominica. I don't know, that's really the story about why I think I'm important for a show like you in news, is that your audience must know that it's a big movement in the 70s called the Dreads in Dominica. And they even had a Dread Act, which was called the Unlawful Societies Act, which allowed dreadlocks to be killed on sight and not to be charged. It basically said that you could kill a member of the unlawful society, which were dreads, and you will not be prosecuted.
Wow.
So my mother, she always, I was growing dreads, but she was liberal in that way. But she still was intellectual and would reason with me about what this thing I have on my head and all of that. And then she said, "Aha!" So when I finished high school, I said, "I got to go back to Dominica. I got to find out where I'm from." And by that point, in that same year, I found out about dread, and then there was a dread movement in Dominica.
Okay.
And so I said, I got to go see what this is, and I got to find myself. I can't just go to college. So she said, "Aha, but you can't go right on your head. They'll send you to jail or kill you." So I cut off that first crop, and this crop I have on now has been growing ever since.
Okay.
Because I cut it, I had it for many years, but I lived in many places, and I lost track of it. I had it for over 20 years. Anyway, so I went to Dominica, and then that really created the dynamic of the Rastaman I am, because it was very political. I was also political. Before I was dread, I was into George Jackson and the Panthers, as I told you. I was reading George Jackson and also reading Carlos Castaneda about getting high, and I was reading Ishmael Reed. So I was, looking back on it, I was, really ahead of my class. To me, it was all just cool, but it doesn't seem like much youths did those kind of things.
Yes.
And then I stayed in Dominica for almost a year. And I had to be called back.
What year did you return to Dominica?
74, late 74. I stayed into 75. The act was passed in 74. So my mother got me to come. I was really just going to stay. I like, okay, I'm going to stay. My mother said, no, your green card is going, because the green card would run out in a year. You used to have to file these forms every year if you had a green card. So no, you can't stay more than a year. Anyway, my mother, I was still a kid. So I came back up. And you got to go to school and all of that. So I came back up. And by that time, my brothers and so on were, doing stuff. And I joined up with them. They were doing horticulture. So we were pretty active in doing that. And at some point, my brother and me were already into music. He used to play, and I used to buy records. He moved into music. He had been to Jamaica, and he met Al Anderson. The whole story that Al Anderson became our friend, and he came over, and then we became friends. And that was a very big influence on me, because Peter Tosh used to come over the house, and I love Peter, and I've loved him and his music. And my personality is a lot like Peter. I'm in your face type of guy, and
Yes,
and Peter was really.
I want you to, for the young people, we have young listeners. Who is Al Anderson?
Al Anderson was the guitar player for Bob, and he met my brother in Jamaica. My brother happened to be around where Hope Road, because we had a good Jamaican friend that was a neighbor, became friend. And somehow Al bounced into him in Jamaica, and they were both young American guys, like my brother. Okay, he was Dominican, but he grew up in Al is from Suriname, actually. They became friends. And so when they came up to the States, when Bob first came up at Schaefer Music Festival, we were there. That's the first time I saw Big Rastaman smoking chalice and shit, So that was, and then I went into music. We got into music. I had some good Dominican friends who were musicians, and that led to different things. A good friend also of Bob and Al's, and he became our friend, was a guy named Lee Jaffe. Very important character in thing. He's the one that plays harmonica on them Bellyful. A very important character in reggae, and a white guy. He was a Jewish guy, dread, an artist of some renown. I heard him on the TV, YouTube the other day. He has a book coming out. Yeah, Lee Jaffe's an important character with Bob in his early years and Chris and all of that. And Lee was very important
So
to Bob's career.
they are knew Bob Marley personally, or
Well, I met Bob, but I was Peter, and Peter was a bumbleclad Bob Marley. I mean, I don't know, bumbleclad boy. So I was always like, I wasn't a big Bob fan, I was a Peter fan because, Peter made his views on Bob very clear. If anybody knew Bob, Peter didn't hold. I mean, if anybody knew Peter, Bob was more reverential about Peter, but Peter, if you know him. So yes, I've been in Bob's dressing room. Totally different. Bob used to have like 20, 40, 50 guys in the dressing room. Peter would have 6, 7, totally different characters. And Peter was highly intelligent, really smart about everything, So anyway, that was my story. I mean, that I became Dread, and Peter was very influential on me. And then I was in the music business, and reggae was really big. And then it's through Lee. Anyway, I met Carl Peterson.
Okay.
You know Carl Peterson? You're Jamaican. No. He's the greatest producer in Jamaican history. He was Island Records producer for years. He did Legalize It, Black Heart Man, and Equal Rights. Okay. He did all of the first Steel Pulses. He was head engineer at Compass Point, which was Island's main studio. He's from a very important Jamaican family. His father is one of the great watercolorists. His brother is Horseman, one of the great photographers of horses at Kimenis Park. His sister, who became the mother of my second child, wonderful woman. She was a dancer, very important, very solid Jamaican family, about, 8 children. Their mother lived until she was about 90. Anyway, me and Carl became great brethren, and Carl is the one that produced Steel Pulse and so on. So I'm the one that backed True Democracy of Steel Pulse. Their greatest album is that, I was the executive producer on that.
Okay.
And it's produced in Scandinavia in a little 16-track studio.
Wow.
Amazing. Carl is like, Carl was brilliant. Just listen to Carl Peterson. Anybody in the music business, Carl Peterson.
Definitely.
And I also, later on, I met what I consider the other greatest producer in reggae, Dennis Bovell, who is from London, a Bajan from London, Eddie Grant's good friend. So I was in the music business, and even with Carl, I went up to London in the early 80s. We were working on this guy named Kwame. It actually became the first local reggae act signed in America ever by a major. It was signed by Polydor, a guy named Kwame. The record didn't do so well, but I met a lifelong friend who was the promoter. They didn't know how to promote reggae because white boys used to go to the shows. They didn't know it was R&B or it was rock. They have so much cubbyhole in how they do their systems that it flipped through the rock. The reggae had to become dominant. And this was early times in the 70s, mid 70s, 78 or so. Bob was special, and Peter, they had a whole other aura about them, and, they were promoting themselves. So that's my story has really been through consciousness and getting into the music. And so
were you able to make money in the music business in those days to sustain yourself? Was the money good?
No. In fact, that's when I decided that I should do law, because I was paying lawyers too much money, and I thought I could do this because it would end up that you couldn't pay lawyers ongoing. You couldn't pay the hourly. So you'd make deals like they'd get 25% contingency when you made a deal, so you'd make a deal and, 25% come off the top goes to the lawyer. But that same lawyer, he ended up being Peter's lawyer. He represented, I got him for Peter, a guy named Robert Urban. Okay. He became Peter's lawyer for years. But that's one of the reasons I went to do law, was I felt I can do it. No, but I really didn't make money, but I was poised to. I had a great act, Mojanaya. We got the single got signed to Streetwise, but again, that was when New Edition and a guy named Arthur Baker. But that it was everything is so fluid in the music. Arthur got strung out just at that time on coke, and then Bobby Brown left this new edition. So Streetwise, their label kind of, which was their main act, kind of fell apart, and so that album, but it's still a great sound. Those guys used to scare Jamaicans. And Jamaican really had a mafia over reggae that I didn't appreciate as much at the time. They really did with the DJs and so on. So us small islanders, man, our music might have been good, but we weren't getting in because there was a whole mafia, with the record stores and the producers. I mean, it's probably so in Kingston too, on another level. But really, they really focused. So they were good, Trinidadians too that could play reggae, but the Jamaicans had a lockdown in Brooklyn, we never were as successful as we could have been. But I mean, I still have them. Some of it is unreleased, and I still think it's valid 40 years later.
Well, I think that the continent is going to be the market where you can.
In the future with that stuff, it's clearly the market for all of Rasta ideas. It was just like the elders said, we just farm them here. They're really going to grow into trees. They're just seedlings here. I'm just a seedling, and my hope is that I can have an impact on this youth rebellion, which is really, I think, the explosion of Rastafari consciousness that you see happening. This is what we called for. Leaderless uprisings, ban away all that Babylon. They just want to destroy the system. And that's what we are talking about. The problem is that we have devised a new system. We have a solution. I haven't heard a solution coming out of the African youths. And I think that's our role. And certainly I think that's my role. Yes. And we need some sort of consciousness center, to get the idea that Rasta is much more than this religion, red, gold, and green, that is a high level of cosmology that is actually the greatest philosophy in the world today. It has moved people of the lowest class of society to realize their kingship and who they are in the world. And the phenomena that Rasta has done just in not even 100 years has reinvented. Look what, how it red, gold, we saw red, gold, and green. And then, what is it? Like 40 of the 53 flags of Africa have red, gold, and green in it. And so that story of mine is a story of Rasta. And it's a story that, talks about how the small, coming from a small place, you can grow big and you can have big impact. And I think that's true about Rasta, and I think that's true about myself, if you will. And that's true in my personal thing in terms of Dominica, because as much as we're dealing with Africa, we also, I'm attuned to the position that you can think global, but you can only act local.
Yes.
So, you can think all you want about Jamaica, but if you're in Maryland, you can only do something in Maryland. So the fact that I'm here, and the fact that I came back here to grow up my children, and I should say, I should greet them all. And so I don't know how many of them are listening, but my children are my wealth. That's all I have.
Yes.
And they're great children. I have 7 biological children. I have 4 girls and 3 boys. They're Makta, Terejas, Dafar, Ibeyene, Leslasa, Abrea, and Fanaye, and my son by another mother named Key. They're all we leave. That's all we leave is our progeny.
Yes,
and we come, so that's why Africans' worship of ancestry is so important, because they recognize that's all you really leave. Yes. That's all of yourself you really leave. So give thanks to my youth, because they've really, they're the ones giving me purpose and continuing to inspire me to do anything else I have to do in this time I have here. Yes. But they're all great youths, They certainly haven't had that kind of history like me. I mean, I've really had a lot of history. You know, I've been shot 5 times.
Wow.
I've been in
We're gonna
jail.
get to that. We're gonna get to that. But
I've been in jail. I've been.
stick a pin. We're gonna get to that. But stick a pin. I wanna ask the eye, because you said you dread, and then you before you went to Dominica. When did you come into the consciousness of His Imperial Majesty? And how did you reconcile that with your upbringing? And how do you view the divinity of His Imperial Majesty Kadamawi Haile Selassie I?
Well, actually, I tell you now, I was reading George Jackson when I was 14, and George Jackson said that little punk in Ethiopia, Haile Selassie. He literally said that little punk in Ethiopia, Haile Selassie. And the fact is, I continue to respect George Jackson, you know, especially his brother. You don't know his story. Jonathan Jackson, his 17-year-old brother, came and took over court, and the judge and all the officers and took them, man. I mean, for his brother. And the police didn't give a shit. They shot the judge, everybody else. They just shot up everybody. Jonathan Jackson, a 17-year-old guy, walked into a court and took it over on behalf of his brother, George.
Oh, wow.
So the point is that I came to His Majesty quite critical. You know, His Majesty had to prove himself to me. And I am telling you, every step of the way, at every moment, Haile Selassie has clarified himself as the perfect human being that has existed. That's all I can talk about. We can talk about, I mean, we know about the mysticism and King of Kings and Lord of Lords and conquering Lion of Tribe of Judah, and his divinity is clearly stated. But you know, it's one thing, because remember, there's other kings that have been called King of Kings and Lords of Lords in Ethiopia. But the point is that you have to look at his life. And at every moment of his life, he proved his credibility. Yes. And that's one of the things I want to be the rest of my time. One of the things I've created a PowerPoint called the 20th Century through African Spectacles, Rastafari, the Man, and the Movement.
Okay.
Because I truly believe that Haile Selassie coming was the coming of the age of Aquarius. And you can see, I mean, the 20th century, you know that there's been more minerals extracted from the earth in the 20th century than all the centuries combined.
Yes.
That's in European recordings. And then when you look at the kinds of inventions that has been occurred, yes, you know, from the late 1800s, you know, through to now, I mean, even now, it's just reciprocating what happened in the 20th century. There's nothing new being done. Artificial intelligence isn't new. It's just faster computers. I mean, that's really, and it's computers, you know, computing to each other.
Yes.
But there's nothing new. It's still the mechanistic view. It's still Newtonian. You know, they're just building upon building. It's not a new paradigm.
Yes.
The new paradigm came in with electricity, you know, and with motors, you know, and so vehiculars and with film and television, film and recordings. And so that 20th century, so talking about the divinity of man, I came to the divinity of majesty studiously and over time.
Yes.
It wasn't immediate.
Yes.
I was
about it.
And then it was also, I became an Ethiophile. You know, I loved icons. The first time I saw Ethiopian icons, I thought they were marvelous. And I was also, because they reminded me of Haitian art.
Okay.
But I was also into, my brother had gone to Haiti and he had brought back Haitian art, like when at that same period, you know. And by the way, my brother's, I mean, you know, he runs the biggest rehearsal studio in New York, and the studio where everybody worked out of, you know. Rocket Studios.
Rocket Studios.
So many Jamaicans got jobs, not as musicians, but as engineers and techs in the music industry. You ask anybody from Forbes, you know, to that they were just, what's his name again? He was Peter's manager. Miller, Herbie. All them ancient guys in the beginning of reggae, all of the Sunsplash stores started by his studio, the buses. So anyway, that same brother, and so the idea of Rasta crystallized you know, I must say a lot of the early information for like our generation came through
Yes.
reggae. But
Okay.
then I looked much deeper, and the Ethiopia angle of His Majesty was something I really was attuned to, and it continued throughout my life. Um, yeah, so so at some point, anyway, I did that business and that music business, and by the '80s, there was so much cocaine in New York, and reggae had really died. You know, Bob had been killed. And you know, there clearly seemed to be a force on reggae, and the business was not what it was before.
Yes.
And I myself was at a crossroads, and as I told you, I had this thing. Anyway, I met a young lady, a Dominican lady,
Okay.
who became my wife and the mother. I had, as I said, I had two children in New York. One was a American woman, beautiful woman, Ayana. She was a poet and a DJ actually at Columbia University, a jazz DJ, and she taught me all about jazz. I learned about jazz. I was a jazz enthusiast, still am. But I convinced her to start a reggae show. I said, "Yo, Columbia needs a reggae show," and we did. So we ran a reggae show for about 2 years there. And we also had an international news bulletin guy, a University student used to do international African news, you know, our 10-minute news break. So
Nice.
that all of a sudden, then that kind of fell apart and I had to find myself. And I decided, well, let me do law. And I was appalled, like what I was telling you, when I learned that, damn, I can qualify in New York and I can't practice in Jersey. So I thought that was stupid and amazing. So anyway, that woman that was close was on her way to London to go to school. And I just dropped everything in New York and I went to London with her. And I enrolled in law school in University of London,
Okay.
external program. And well, actually, it wasn't so. They didn't accept me, although I'd done the SATs in New York. I had done in the top third. I'd even attended Baruch College when I came back for a year. And I wasn't into school, and I was more into music. Then I went to think. But what I'm saying, I'd done all of that, and they wouldn't. After I went up there, and I couldn't. So I had to do the A levels in England. So my first year in
Okay.
England, I did 3 A levels to get into law school. And so I
Okay.
got into the law school and I did law in England. Um, yeah. And I did law in England. And it was very interesting.
What year was that?
I was in London from 86 to 91. I never stopped too, you know. I mean, I had a great friend from New York called Stafford Harrison. Don't know if you've heard of him. He's a great playwright from from Jamaica. He did the first Broadway play on reggae in Broadway called Reggae.
Okay.
And it was the first Broadway play on reggae. You can look it up. Anyway, Stafford Harrison. And then he had this other play, this brilliant play called Nyabingi. And I was to learn really later, it was all about Pinnacle. But I didn't know about Pinnacle at that time.
Okay.
It was a story about a Rasta camp that, it was, when I learned it, it was really a caricature or theater on Pinnacle. And when I went to London, as I said, I'd been to London with music before and I'd met Dennis Bovell. In fact, Dennis Bovell, I don't know if you know him, he studied Matumbi. He's the guy that produced Linton Kwesi Johnson for years, and he was the band behind Lyndon Kwesi Johnson.
Okay.
He's actually a Bajan, like a lot of guys, like Brinsley Ford for Aswad is actually from Guyana. It's not Jamaicans. It's a more West Indian community in London, and so I went up to do law, but I was still into my music and my arts and so on. And with another brother that I met called Shango Baku, who is Sheku's good brethren.
Yes.
Legendary. One of the most brilliant Rasta men ever. And a great actor and a playwright himself. And I hooked up and we made a proposal to the Arts Council about mounting this play. But because we both felt, me and Shango, that at that time I was pretty, Rastaman, that, yo, man, we can't do a play in London on Rasta without getting the Rasta communities okay. Totally different, like the Bob movie, like they make a Bob movie and don't talk to the community or something. We were not going to do a play on Rasta without letting the Rasta community feel the play and approve,
Yes, I.
And so we got a funding from Arts Council in London to do just that. And so whilst I was going to law school, in the evening, we ran this program, and I brought Sekou up. I brought Ras Tafari up. I brought a whole bunch of men up to London to have these reasonings with the community, and we would read parts of the play. And we did great work. Sister Dennis, a Grenadian, did all the films. All that film got lost, man. It's amazing. I mean, that film had all the elders and like Job Bones up in North London, great Rasta brethren that was from the old days in Kingston in the 60s who had moved to London. Okay. Job Bones, who was like the elder man in London at the time. So all of that, I was doing that, and at the same time going to school and having children. My first boy, who's the only one that's really dread, actually, but he was born in Brixton.
Okay.
My second boy was born in Dominica because his mother was too pregnant to travel. So I was starting school in October, and she was too pregnant. So she had the baby, and I met him when she came up to London in January or so. Okay. He was about a month or so old. So that we did that. That's an important part of my Rasta being, because I really got to meet a lot of man and spread my views. Very important time, London in the 80s. I met Bona G's, and them came up in 86.
Okay.
I met Bona G's in 86, and he had been not part of that, but part of it. So that was my London story.
What happened to the play? Did the play ever get staged?
No, what happened that it didn't get staged because actually what was it is that somebody died at the Bingi. Playwrights, and I had a big argument with Stafford, and Eichel wanted to change it. I don't know if you know Eichel, one of the more important Rastaman too, another good brethren of mine. And there was a debate because a man died at the Bingi. And like Stafford had it in the play for the, playwrights, the drama of it all. Die, Rasta can't die at Bingi, Bomba, so that was the crust of the argument. And so, the very reason I guess we had it, it turned out to be, no, the community did not want that. Much to the upset of Stafford, Stafford, that was the reason we doing it, dude. You know what I mean? Because now
that part, he didn't want to rewrite that part.
No, that was a big argument, and with him and Eichel as a playwright too, and Shango, and he was not having it, and he was that type of character. He was a true artist, and anyway, he died. He ended up, coking himself out. I think he died as a young man in his 40s or something in Jamaica. But he's from an important family in Jamaica. I mean, I need to look them up. The Harrisons. He was very middle class Jamaican, like third world man, them kind of man there,
But I think that underscores the importance of having that community input, because it really would have.
It would have been a big thing for put plays on with in front of white people and so on, and the community, So exactly. It was, but it
then especially when the person, people dying on the Naya Bingi house is not on board, that would have been very divisive.
And not just that, it wasn't the Naya Bingi house, it was part, but it was the Rasta community.
Yes.
What I think is that Sister Dennis had filmed all of this stuff, and then Sister Dennis died young too, and for some reason, all these VHS tapes, I'm talking about maybe 100.
Wow.
We don't have them. I mean, they were a great body of information, and especially the youths of today would be learning a lot. I mean, I can't even remember the heavy level of, but I know there were high reasoning. You know, so that was my experience in London, and there's certain things that happened in London I don't know, I cannot speak to about here, but I was a guest. I was a guest of Her Majesty at the last part of my my stay in London, and so I decided that I would not do the bar in England because it was £4,000. I had 2 children by that time. London is very expensive if you're not a citizen, you know, and you're not getting help.
Yes.
You know, London, man, them landlords will be joking. They're getting rent by the week, dude. Not by the month, you know. You got to pay rent every week.
Wow.
Oh man, you know, unless you're council, like all mine that I was with were council, they're in council flats, you know. But even at that point, Stature was selling, and I could have bought the council house I was in, right? Because I was actually, Dennis gave me his council house because he was living in his thing. And I could have bought it right by Battersea, right across from Chelsea. I would have bought it. That's like $2 million apartment now.
Wow.
But you know, she had a cousin or some little girl living in the house with us, and she got, you know, she told the council on us, and so it never went through. Because I would have got my parents to help me, and it would have been a good investment. Anyway, that's that.
Yeah.
And so that I left London to come to the Caribbean because
hold
Dominica,
on, stick up in, because you said you met the Queen of England. You can't.
No, I didn't meet her. I was a guest of hers, if you know what that means.
Okay.
I was a guest of hers.
Okay.
Before I left. I don't need to give more detail.
Okay. We have the oversight.
Right. In fact, I found out I passed the bar being a guest of hers.
Okay.
So my story is quite interesting. And so I came back to the Caribbean to do the bar because it was free. Dominica was paying scholarships.
Yes.
And all I had to do was pay. I mean, it was ridiculous. I had to take care of my own self, but it was like 470 TT dollars. I had to buy books, and I had to, you know, pay for my room and board, but tuition was free. And like, for example, St. Vincent wasn't paying, and those guys were paying 30 grand.
Wow.
And so I was always honored by that. And I always found that these guys that became lawyers for things that they never gave back, I used to tell them in Trinidad, yo, man, banana farmers paying for your education. You know, I hope you do something when you go back home. But no, you know, there's no social activist lawyer tradition in England. It's not like you have the William Kunslers, and I mean, it's much less now in the United States, but for a long time there was a whole advocacy element. Yes. But there's not that in England much at all. And so, yes, I came down to Dominica with 2 young boys, one born in 88 and one born in 89.
Okay.
And I came back to the Caribbean in 91, and I acclimatized myself in Dominica for a year. And then I did bar school in Trinidad between 93 and 95.
Okay.
No, what am I talking about? Between 91 and 93.
Okay.
I graduated in 93 and was called 2 days after my daughter was born. My daughter, wonderful young lady, who later on became Queen of Dominica. When she was, I think she was 20 or 21. But she was born, she was 3 days old when I got called to the bar. So I know my call to the bar is her age. So, yeah. And so I was called to the bar in 93, and I've been here since.
Okay. So in terms of your matriculation as an attorney, were you aware of any other Rastafari attorneys at that time?
Oh, no. I'm the first Rasta called to the bar in the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court.
Okay.
I had a cousin who was, he was still at Cave Hill. He has been called, I think he came out 2 or something years later. And he was even refused to be called to the bar because back in the day, in the Dred's time, he's a Dred too, a known Rastaman. His mother and my father are brother and sisters. He graduated, but they refused him because he had a gun charge like 20 something years ago. Anyway, he waited some time and a new judge came and he was called. So he was the second, as far as I know, called to the bar in the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court. Wow. I shouldn't say that. Miguel actually was called in St. Lucia before me. But, you know, like, for example, Miguel, I met Miguel as part of this process of doing Nyabingi in England.
Okay. So you know Ras Miguel from that time?
Right. And like Sekou I met at that time because I met Shango in London. Sekou wasn't in London at the time, but Shango was. Yeah. And so at all those times is when I made my international hookups. In my New York experience, it was music and it was reggae and it was what I was telling you about.
Yes.
And then in London, it was a wider Rasta consciousness and wider experience learning law. And I read at SOAS. So I used to go up to the library too, you know, and Edward Ullendorf the one who did the autobiography of His Majesty, was the head of SOAS, you know, of the African Studies Department in SOAS. Okay. It was a beautiful library, a big glass thing. So that's where I read.
Did you ever get a chance to reason with Edward Ullendorf?
No, but I was good brethren with, at the same time, remember in London, I mean, it was Seymour. I could have, you know, I just wasn't brave enough. I just never went to his office, but I knew of him. But at the same, I was in London at the time, Seymour, you know the great Seymour that, I mean, I don't know, man. We used to tell Seymour, what the hell, send it to Jamaica. You know, like the elders should be able to keep it. I mean, the man had over like 100, I don't know. Yo, I'm telling you, it's magic. These books are like this big, man. Like, how the fuck? You know, if you hear his story, he was listening to Ras Mickle and getting inspired through being, yo, I am telling you, there was some real mystics. He's never explained it. And I think he's transitioned. Like, we never understood, like the EWF headquarters,
and
like we knew about it.
Again, stick a pin, explain for the young people who you're talking about and what he did.
Okay, his name is Ras Seymour, and he was actually had come into Ras Tafari from being into something else before. He wasn't like from youth. Anyway, he's a brilliant guy, and I mean, you see his story, but he has said his own story, but he then got so interested through Haile Selassie and Rastafari about Ethiopian stuff. So he used to go in the library and ask, and then they would give him these, you know, these manuscripts. And he was so amazed by them, he said, that, you know, they would forget and he would take them. Then he started to go to higher and higher libraries, like the British Library and the School of African and Oriental Studies. And now all these books were later found out how they had them is that they had stolen them from Magdala. The whole of the Ethiopian collection in the British Library and SOAS is really books, majority of them that they had taken from Magdala, which if the young people don't know, it's the famous story of how the English, by a man named Napier, who by the way is connected to Dominica, because he has ancestors that were in Dominica. But this man, Seymour, took over 100 manuscripts, some great illuminated manuscripts out of these places, and they didn't miss them. Up to now, it is one of the miracles, the great miracles of Rastafari story. So anybody who doesn't know it should look for it. It is on YouTube. I can't remember his surname, but Ras Seymour.
Yes.
It's a fantastic story.
Yes.
It went to court, you know, because he was charged with, it was one of the great things because he admitted that he took them, but nobody could prove how. So he was never charged because you have to prove how. No lie. Never established how he did it. And I think because they got back the books, now it's very hard to get those books now.
Yes.
That's one of the things Seymour did. They got them under lock and key now. You go there now and there's all kind of documents you got to fill out to get to see books. So that's another. I think it's the only case of its kind in the English courts, because he was charged, he was found guilty, but there was no sanction because they never figured out how he took the books. And so that England experience was quite fascinating for me. And so that brings me to like 93 when I come back to Dominica.
Yes.
Having studied in Trinidad. And in Trinidad, of course, I continued to be active, not as active as in England because I had two little children too. But I was within the Rasta community in Trinidad to a less extent than I was earlier in Brooklyn and then in London. And so I've been here, and I came back here really because I had two little children in the throat, and I couldn't think of a better place to grow them up.
Yes.
So I couldn't imagine growing them up in New York,
Yes.
what it had become. And here should be a Rasta nation. This is the island in the Caribbean that all Rasta should move to and take over. It's perfectly placed for us. It's the natural phenomena, maybe of the world. I mean, it has the largest boiling lake in the Western Hemisphere. I mean, that's Brazil you're talking about. I mean, don't have one. United States don't have one. Canada, you're talking about this little 298 square foot mile. It has two other freshwater lakes. It has 5 active volcanoes. It's the most, it has the most surface water per size for 298 square. They haven't even started they don't even dig wells here. There's so much water. Has 4 waterfalls over 150 feet. It just is a phenomenal natural wonder. It has the last place of indigenous people that remains in the Caribbean, still with their own territory, and the only place where in the CARICOM, which practices, is there any in Guyana, but that practices traditional land rights. So I came back here and to this space, which had this history of dread, and then it had to learn then now from being here, it had all due respect to Cudjoe and Nani, but in terms of impact on the society, its Mawa tradition is maybe greater than Jamaica in terms of its impact. It's also the last island that was colonized. I mean, it suffered less than 100 years of slavery because it was ceded to the Kalinago under the treaties, the Arch-Chapelle, which they signed in the mid-1600s. But the British broke the treaty in 1763. And so it's right between Martinique and Guadeloupe. It's geopolitically right at the center of the Caribbean chain. It's just a fantastic natural wonder. But it's also the smallest economy in CARICOM. It didn't have the grid, was never a cane made producer. It was never a big colonial society at all. And so it never developed that foundation. And then it wasn't good for tourism, classic tourism. It doesn't have a lot of beaches and long beaches. It has rivers and valleys and hot water springs. And, most things are difficult. It's not easy to get to, so it's not tourist friendly.
Yes.
But that's the very reason why it stayed so independent. But I argue now that all those qualities, it was the stone that the builder refused. Now, all those qualities are what you want, as excellent soils, volcanic soil. So that's just to say, I brought back the children and I never regretted growing them up here. But I myself have had a very, the drama in my life didn't stop because of that. It maybe even got heightened because I came, from a New Yorker, London, I'm a Rasta man. I'm going to change this. I was quite aggressive. Those people who know me when I was younger, used to call me Turbo Dread. Um, because I was really about making things happen. But
Yes.
what happened, I ran against a wall of conservatism that is Dominica,
Yes.
And so I ended up getting shot down here and, being sent to jail. And a lot of negative things have happened to me down here because of that attitude. And I have philosophized that Jah wanted me to stop and breathe and just be more subtle and be more wise. And that's what I'm attempting to be now over the last 10 years or so. And I truly believe, in terms of Rasta, in the long term, I have maybe made the right decision. What I see, if I can comment, if you
Yes,
will, on
I.
the Rasta movement generally,
Yes, I.
is that by becoming, our success has been our problem. Like with Bob, like Bob's success has made everybody like want to be a musician, and it's somehow Rasta is a musician, and then of course, as the elders had said, you start going. Reason Bunny never taught. You start going in them bars and going, you know. So I think Rasta's success and becoming accomplished in different elements of this society has allowed them to be absorbed into society, and that's Babylon's greatest trick. So they absorb you into the society. Being here has kept me out, and I think it's become full circle that Rasta must go back to its roots. Rasta must shun Babylon. I think me and you may have a little, differences of that. I don't think technology as much, yes, communication and certain things, but I mean, the idea, like what you were talking about, Mike, books are extremely important. Rasta should be about books. We are about agency. We are about naturality. The principle about ganja, yes, it's about ganja's enlightenment, but the true overarching principle is how nature, you can build a civilization on nature. So as much as ganja was giving us the civilization in our mind, it took us a while to realize, oh shit, we can fuel vehicles like this. We can build vehicles on it. Oh, we can build houses, we can medicate, So, but the point is not so much cannabis, but naturality. And so the idea of Rasta being this man in the hills, self-sustenance, that back to nature process, it's, I think, shunned by a lot of Rastaman that, oh, now we make it, like I don't think that like Africa and its new freedom should be, mining all these minerals and doing just I would shut down all the mines and stop extraction. And I think as Rastaman, that's what we should be asking. Yes, we want people to be comfortable, have roads, etc. But the essence of the story is that we can't be following this nasty personality that has created this nasty culture out of these nasty industries that create so much damage. It's cleaning up we have to do all the dump sites that they've used in Africa, for their waste, nuclear waste and all of that. Our environmental concerns to save our land should be the first, and that's what Rasta should be bringing to Traore and them. That's another thing. I don't know. I think we should have the ear of the leaders. We're mystics. We're advisors. We're counsel. I think we should be advising leadership, not necessarily vying for leadership. That's my personal view, because I see that's the Rastaman is the wise man who is trying to counsel. And I myself, having been that guy that wanted to, I didn't talk about my career. My career here has been very involved in environment because of Dominica's spectacular ratings on that. So, I've spoken on behalf of international NGOs to the UN General Assembly. I was often one of the only black guys in the environmental movement. My Rasta friend, we don't follow that. That's white man something. We don't know environmentalist. Muckle. I had to go through all of that, understanding that that's who we really are. We should have been the leading voice in the environmental movement, but again, it got corporately taken over, and I saw what was happening, and I backed off. But between 95, because I left government in 95 because I couldn't get along with government, actually, as you can imagine. And so, I did my 2 years. So I was involved in environmental movement between 1995 and 2005. And that's where I first did a lot of my law. Well, earlier with government, but environmental law and treaties and so on. I had, the Whaling Commission, UNEP, UNDP, all those UN meetings I was attending, many through those years. And it was wordsmithing. You're trying to wordsmith documents, and it's really, it became like, this is not what I'm about, and the fact that I was in Dominica and there was a real environmental space. I thought I could do it here, and I worked a lot with the Rasta brethren here. But again, as I said, those kinds of attitudes, there's a limitation that I think that has come into Rasta, and one of the fears I have of the movement is that they're turning into another tribe. We're not here to be the next tribe of Africa called Rasta. I disagree with this idea that we're any religion. I don't even want to, even now I'm arguing about ganja for a human right. It's not a religious right. It's a human right to plants. They can't stop you from accessing plants. And so I fear for that in the Rasta. It's very important for the high cosmology, like the whole principle of what do we mean when we say I and I? And do you know His Majesty never said I? You studied His Majesty, right? You wrote on His Majesty. I've studied His Majesty stuff. His Majesty always used the imperial we.
Yes,
he never said we that use I, but it's I and I. We don't use we. We're sovereign. The whole point of these constitutions is creating human sovereigns, that we're sovereign, and in our sovereignty, we can collect with other sovereigns, King of Kings, and create societies. And so these principles and those high reasonings of how Rasta came up with, I say can contest all the great philosophies in the world. And we need to have debates with other philosophers about, so that this idea that Rasta is the cult, no, Rasta is the highest philosophy in human debate of today, where you can explain to the most Baka wall and the Dongle and places are in the lowest ebb, and to create such magnificent thoughts, and to grow it to where it has become today, where it's getting so big, they're forgetting that. And that's what I don't want us to forget. And you, as the next generation coming up, is critically important, about this roots of this idea, that this isn't about fashion, like you see, like how this, they're making them now. We used to be killed for it in Dominica, right? Now, the point was that you can't tell me, you can't, like this beard is original beard. It never been cut. Never, right? Because I tell you, I went dread since I'm 16, so before I have a beard, right? So, but the idea wasn't to have a long beard, it was to say, you can't tell us what's beautiful. We'll decide. The principle, like the hair doesn't mean much now to me. It's there, but the point, because I think I've proven my point, and I would lose, as you know, man were beards, man, before they were locks, man, right?
Yes,
I would lose my locks long before I lose my beard.
Yes, sir.
Beard maketh a man. A woman can't grow beard. I'm jealous. They always tell me, oh, shave that beard. It itch me. Oh, tickle. Because you can't grow one, put up with it. That's where I'm coming from. So I think that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I think that's one of the strong issues that people like you really represent, and the people that you bring on the show, to keep this highness of reasoning of, like what does, as we're talking about the I, and that the idea that ganja is the portal to how plants are our total history and our future. We eat plants. That's why we say, don't eat flesh, eat plants, right? We wear plants and we live in plants. We're a plant, and our roots we shall grow from our head. So that idea, we since the 80s we should have had a journal on Rasta thought, a quarterly.
Yes.
There's a lot of moments we've lost, but what we have grounded, I think, is extremely firm. But I think it's very necessary for the current African youths, especially.
Yes.
I'm starting to wonder about the Caribbean. Again, the elders told us, forget about here. We're so happy to be here and try and make Jamaica or make Dominica. The elders, our teachers told us, we want to go back Africa, forget here. And isn't it coming very, very clear that they were right? Like, how are you really going to change Jamaica?
Yes.
You're really going to change Jamaica.
These places are satellites. I wouldn't abandon them completely because they're
they will satellites after we get control of Africa.
But that strategy, you always control your home base, the center where the resources are, where you have the land, the land, which is the basis of wealth. You secure that first, and then you worry about the satellites. So that's a strategic
right. Be aware of them, that they're there, and so on. But what I'm saying is that it seems to me that how this is playing out is that this generation of graybeards, the graybeards that taught me, were telling us about these days. We're the ones that should be in Africa teaching. We're the ones that should be teaching these youths. It's not our thing. And my view is that Rasta may not stay Rasta. The Rasta of the future may be called Selassieites. You understand? Just like one grows, Haile was Rastafari first, and then he became Haile Selassie. Maybe the movement will grow and we'll no longer be Rastafari, but we will have achieved our maturity and we'll be called Selassieites. And so that this is a total thing in flux. Everything is movement, we're vibrations. All of these consciousness we talked about first.
One of the things I think is that we have to recognize that unity does not mean uniformity. There does not have to be a contention between the man in the hills and the man who is writing the journal that you're talking about, or that's doing the media. We need both. We need the full.
But the man doing the journal must recognize that the man in the hills is his source.
Yes, and he needs to go in the hills to himself.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's just remembering. It's like the reggae musician has forgot the man in the hills. And I forgot being rebel. Really, Buju Duck, and nobody singing boom boom bye and a bati bye head. Nobody sang one song about the fake World Trade Center bombing. Nobody's singing about what's happening in Africa now. Like, where's the reggae musician gone? Them soft, and like Vibes Cartel is your hero. Bombaras, Clark. That true?
Man.
The boy come out of jail and get some white girl. Really? That's what gangster turn in Jamaica?
Well,
that's the gangster them gonna have. Them bad gangster you have. Them come out of jail and run with white woman, Snow Bunny. That's what I go on.
Well, we don't associate with Vibes Cartel. We know that is far, far from Rastafari.
No, I understand that, but you understand. He put dread on them head, like Jay-Z. Them put dread on them head. They're all trying to suck our energy. So I'm not attacking Vibes Cartel. I'm saying why it's so important for others to assert who we really are.
Definitely.
So who them man are very clear. They're not of us. You understand?
One of the things that we advocate on this platform and that we say is that agriculture is the source of our wealth in terms of building our nation, returning to the land. As I say, the farmer is one of the most important people within what we are building, and we have to give the farmer more prominence than we give the artist. And I say that as an artist, but the farmer man is key within our whole fullness. We are working on an ITAL certification standard. that will help us to ensure that across the board, you know what I
Well,
mean? Go
I
ahead.
mean, I talked to Miguel about that at least 20 years ago. Even the iritical language, all of these things that, could be patented. Um, um, like we have a children's book. I'm working a children's book on Haile Selassie, a really nicely done children's book on Haile Selassie is absolutely needed.
Yes.
But at the same time, all of those things, now remember, this going back to the hills, isn't some nostalgic thing. It was because we want to get food that we growing. We want to eat ITEL food. Remember,
Exactly.
that's what it's all about, the structure, the sovereign structure. And
Control.
then it's being among Jah. So when you're in the hills, it's not we're gonna stay there, but we have to go back to source to relearn.
And we have to own the land that the hill that they're
Well,
in. We
well,
have
that's one of the things, I do come from a bourgeois family, and I do have an estate that my father has left for me. Apart from my brothers and sisters, because he told me, he said, yo, you the one that really came back. You the one that came back. So I have the land there and I have some brethren on it. And my plan is to really go there and create a camp, and start developing youths from learning to camp
Yes.
and to be there. It's a big cocoa estate.
Yes.
So we want to make cocoa the basic crop, and then learn to make cocoa. But I think that is the future for man, that we cannot, I'm telling you, you'll see it. I mean, if I had been on that land for the last 30 years, I might be better than I am now,
Yes.
struggling with this law. Because, as a Rasta, yeah, I could make money, but I'd have to not be a Rastaman anymore. You wouldn't help people. Everyone come to your office have to pay.
Yes.
I mean, like all the other lawyers. But,
Exactly.
you just like, as I was telling you, can you really be a Rastaman and a successful investment banker?
It's
I
rough.
don't think you can.
And
You'd have to make
I
too
don't
many
think
compromises.
this is what, as Rastafari attorneys we face this because we do a lot of free work for the community, and that stops you from making money, because while you're doing that free work, you cannot be doing cases that would bring you the money. And a lot of
Dude,
times people with the deep pockets are the same people that you would want to fight against. These are the big companies, the you know what I mean? So people have to understand the sacrifice that we make as attorneys. This is one of my elders here that inspired I as a young attorney. So this is a great honor, to have the eye on the platform, and to hear the eye wisdom, because I think the Lion Pride will agree that the eye has come with, immeasurable wisdom this evening. What I want to know, and what I want to take your brain power and reason on, because yes, we can diagnose the challenges. What is the vision moving forward? You've touched on it, but I wanna articulate, and what is the legal framework? Because I titled this episode that the fight is not over. What are the battles that we need to fight? What is the legal framework to manifest this heaven on earth that we sung about, that we told the people about, and that is still, a fleeting illusion being pursued but not attained by humanity. And if there's not an example of this, and if not us, then who? If not now, then when? These are the things. So give us the vision. What are the battles that we need to fight? And what does the framework look for us to manifest our divine destiny as Rastafari people?
Oh, as Ras, I was going to say, who do we are?
Yes.
But just remember, as I said earlier, I don't see Rasta as some distinguished grouping, like I would see Igbo or Yoruba, or Amhara, that kind of thing. Rasta is coming to show humanity, what man should look like. And so if you tell me like what's how Rasta should move forward. Rasta should move forward, I believe, by strongly creating communes, natural communes, or even urban communes, where so man can collectively work together in some form. But in the spaces that we are in the more the issue you have about land, as you see, it's getting more, there's less commons. But that's what I see. Unless we start showing communities, like we don't have a school that we can show. Like right now, I'd love to go to a Rasta monastery and just be able to read Ethiopian books or read about Haile Selassie, you know, and
Yes.
write and so on. So I think that we have become too emmeld and molded into Babylon society. Babylon society is going to fall, and it's going to fall quickly.
It's falling. It's falling.
And no, but it's going to fall quickly, and
Yes.
everything the elders said has come to pass.
Yes.
And that's the last thing remaining. Yo, dude, they talk about ITIL and think everybody talking about natural and so on.
Yes,
right?
sir.
They talk about every tree, fig tree have to go back to its thing. You could see this nationalism. Everybody wants to go back to their tree.
Yes.
You know, you talk about we talked about Haile Selassie himself. Now remember, we said this, and everything we said about him he's been brought to reality.
Yes, sir.
And so our prophecy as a people is unblemished. So if one of the original prophecy was leave the land of the sinking sands,
Haile.
right? Like
Haile.
go. So the solidity of that, we will hurt ourselves in not realizing it. And I myself, I mean, I'm from this space, and even in the space that has so much nature, it has to force me there. And so I encourage everybody, and I should have done this a long time ago, that we need to create small, even if it's 4 or 5 families. You know, the pinnacle is, again, our model, where we can create our own foods and live a natural, simple life. We don't need none of this stuff. You don't need television.
Decentralized communities.
Decentralized. I'm not about this collective centralized. It's more like nodes, like a web, like what you see working now.
Yeah.
Big, large entities under oneness don't work. Even when you, like in Ethiopia and Africa, these things work by clans. Clans formed into this, which formed into that, which formed into a tribe. You know, it's from these smaller units that have that integrity, that integrity can be replicated. Like even now, like we could elect ourselves, even me and you, to speak on behalf of Rastafari. Really, we can elect ourselves at any platform because there is no leadership in Rastafari. Because all of I and I are supposed to be able to do that. That's the whole point, and why they haven't been able to destroy us like they did the Panthers or all the other movements. Because we're totally decentralized. There is no centrality. We are everywhere and we're nowhere. You understand? I mean, we are this mystic. We are the monk that is walking through the streets. And we forget that character of us. And we make us like common people. We're not common. We're very uncommon. We're very rare. A real Rastaman is a rare commodity.
What I say, Elder, is that we have a lot of hobbyists that have locks. You know what I mean? We have a lot of reggae show attenders. You know what I mean?
And we can't fight that because as much as we said,
I say that as well. If you watch the channel, you know I support all of the people. But what I say is that the people who are serious have to start coming together now.
Right. That's my point, and have to elect themselves. And I talked to you about that earlier because that's something that is really right and that it will force us to. You know, isn't Africa ready for a conference now, a Congress? There should really be at this point with the importance of what, you know, and that there's talk about having a Congress about what's the future of Pan-Africa, which all of us can participate in. And so what will Rasta's contribution be to that? And how will that be defined? And that's critical going forward. And I think if anything, and you put the call out there to the elders, to the Cecil Gutsmores and the Mutas, that there really is this is a point in time where we're coming up to 100 years of the coronation.
Yes, sir.
You know, as the same 1930 that they have for all their calamities. I mean, it's something that your listeners may not know, but do you know that the Vatican, our chief enemy, and people forget that, is the papacy and the Catholic Church? It's not the Jews, it ain't the thing, it's the papacy and the Jesuits. Those are the enemy. I mean, your listeners may not even realize that the Vatican only came into being in 1929. And they got the Vatican into being through the Lateran Treaty to prepare themselves for the coming of His Majesty in 1930. Are you aware of the Lateran Treaty?
I've heard of it. Well,
it's the critical, most important document. It creates the Vatican, this little state that's a tiny, smaller than Roseau.
That was in 1929 the Vatican was created.
Right. Now, there was a place called the Vatican, the Vatican State. That's a part of a city, and a city within a state is a country with more diplomatic credibility than any other country, more than the United States. And that's not their normal priests. That's their nuncios.
Yes.
And all the banking systems, all of that, they had to pay them. So I have a writing, I'm developing it. The point is that they had to create the Vatican as their international force, right? To consolidate it because His Majesty was being coronated the next year.
Yes.
And they knew this. And so the Lateran Treaty is incredible importance. And again, it's another one of those practical things, but that shows the mystical importance of His Majesty. It's a treaty in the normal sense, but it was signed by Mussolini and the Pope. Now remember, then the Pope supported them in that war.
Yes.
Their first war in 1892, the Pope didn't support them. Right? Yes. The Pope was against the country of Italy. It disagreed, remember? That's why they had to finally, the Pope stayed in the Vatican from 1871 to 1930 when they signed that treaty. He didn't recognize Italy as a state. The Italian state was formed by the Lombardi Revolution, I think, or uprising in 1871, the time of the First Vatican Council.
Serious.
And so all of these histories has His Majesty bringing in, and this history that we're talking about, where while the elders talked about it, what we should be, which is totally different than who we call in our king and our leader, because we're supposed to be royalists, right? Live in royal palaces and so on, but that's not what we're about. We're about living in a simple life. So that's the legacy of His Majesty. It's I and this consciousness. So we owe it to His Majesty to live out the purity of this consciousness, which is so holy, it has brought us this far. But it's just this life, eating ital, believing in naturality, of not knowing and working and being with naturality, seeing the plant and using the plant for its fullness. That without ganja, where's the economy of Rasta? And
what I say, my esteemed elder and esteemed colleague, is that we have to go through a period of consolidation, industrialization, because we have to scale. One of the things that we require are institutions, as you said, the schools, the health centers. We have to go from a survival mode, because remember, Pinnacle was a prosperous Rastafari community. It was not a poverty scenario by a long shot. It was based agribusiness.
But simple.
They were making the simplicity, but not poverty, because what is happening now is that we've associated Rastafari movement and righteousness with poverty, and that is not
that's not what it's about. No,
that's a we can live you can have a luxurious bamboo floor, you can have a luxurious bamboo toilet, or hemp, or you can with hempcrete. So natural does not mean that it has to be a shack or a shanty.
No, I'm not saying that. I agree with you.
I know what the guy is saying, but I just want to clarify.
Right, to the audience,
to the audience that we have to look because Haile Selassie and Empress Men were both business people. They came from the noble class, but they used their wealth to develop Ethiopia. They built institutions that they live by example, investing all of their wealth from their families, noble families, into the infrastructure, roads, schools, churches. In the case of Empress Menen, the Haile Selassie Prize Trust was built by His Majesty selling some of his farms that he inherited from Ras Makonnen, and that was used to stimulate the sciences, education, technology, and these things. So the model of how to move as nobility is there. What we have to do is that we have to now, the bird imple them, which are the Aichal brethren who live in the hills. That is an important part of the Livity, but now we have to look at it through the lens of how can we own the community. Why you don't see so much bird imple in Jamaica again is because the real estate is so valuable that it's very difficult for just live off of land, because people are utilizing their land now, you know what I mean? So that kind of cut that tradition. In the days of Muta, you know, I interviewed Muta, and he said they just found some land and they went and, you know what I mean, up in the hills, and they create, and enough Rastas were living like that in the 70s and in the 60s. That's very difficult to do that right now, if not impossible, in Jamaica on that scale, because landowners are now either putting a farm, there's foreign sale of land, there's not these big swaths of land that's just there. So we have to own land. We have to build the school, because we had to send our youths to school and face certain things that we didn't love, but we didn't have an alternative. We don't have the farms, you know, the teaching farms where we can bring school children, where we can sell products, where we can manufacture finished goods from that product and sell them, so that we can build our own roads, our own infrastructures, our own sanitation, that maybe the sanitation filters into a creek and it's filtered by natural things, and we rethink how, you know, we interact. But we don't have these models because we don't have the capital to build. So we have to balance, and His Majesty said this, we have to balance spiritual and material. And a lot of people, you know, live in a fantastical that we can just be the bird employer, just deal with the anciency and not deal with the other part, which is the industrialization. As Majesty said, agriculture is a prerequisite to industrialization. But these are the things that Africa requires. We have to be able to employ our youths. If we can't employ our youths, we're not going to retain our youths. You know what I mean? If they can't work within our ecosystem and raise their families from Rastafari work, the youths them are going to go out in Babylon and then have to get beaten before they return with all type of trauma. So I just want to put that realistic part on it, because a lot of our brethren, and remember, as a younger brethren, you know, I have brethren from the full spectrum. I have bird imple brethren, and I have PhD brethren who deal with nothing but books. So I have the full spectrum, you know what I mean? A lot of people, I even see in the comments some fire burn, and I love it. But the fire is so hot right now. You have to show me what you have built, you know, because if you're telling me about a fantasy life in the woods, and things, I don't want to hear that right now, to be honest, because the Armageddon is real. When the supply chain shut down, yes, you may be able to etch out a survival for yourself living up in the wissy, but can you provide for a community with that plan? And do you have a plan for the community when everything shut down and we have to provide for 10,000 or 1,000 people? So these are the ways we have to think. Tell me if I'm wrong, my elder.
No, you're right. But one of the things that we go over very simply is that I remind people that all economy is based on culture, right? So even Rasta is seen as whatever, you know, and has made themselves a lot of man more the crabbit look, and, you know, and a level of look of being poor. Now, remember, that started out because man was really not, they didn't have a lot of stuff, but they had dignity. Their clothes may have holes, but it was clean. So there was those principles. Now, you talk about economics. Now, His Majesty gave us $2 billion industries that we threw away, right? He gave us ganja. You know what I'm telling you, I was in horticulture. I know what ganja can do. I know what ganja has done for man. But we threw it all away. We gave it to people. He gave it, and when we used the money, we started buying powder with it. And I know this. And we didn't evolve it. Then he gave us reggae, another $1 billion industry. That is from our culture. All I am trying to tell man is that if we go back, it's not about staying in the hills or leaving but we need to go there to build the source of this power. We can't get the energy and the power we need if we stay amongst these people. Can't you feel it? It really is real.
I agree.
And the more you're around the Almighty, as the elders, you can keep everything. We build everything here anyway. Keep it all. Goodbye. We're going to do greater things than this. We did this under pressure. Imagine if we were just doing it at our own. Now, it may sound idealistic, but without ideas and without ideals, you don't begin. They would have said we're crazy about having dreads and all these things that we said. Look how it has come to pass. So I wouldn't give up on the essential part of the movement and say, oh, you're just up in the hills doing. It's not about that. It's not about it's about that, you see your shit that you have, it looks soft and nice, but it's too good. I see it, it's smelling bad. I'd rather go sleep on my straw coconut mattress. You know what I mean? So I understand what you're saying. Don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about that we're going to remain. But what my problem as this man who has lived in the cosmopolitan and made myself and more motivated by those things more than country things, my clear recognition is that's not going to be great for my children. And now that I have grandchildren, like I can't see them surviving in this system, and many people can't. So I wouldn't want to replicate. Now, what you're saying is right. We need schools and all of that, but we don't need the formal schools. Schooling can be more informal. And once you create communities, this idea of having a whole Jamaica of some million people, or even all those, I think smaller communities and managing themselves, that's what we have to really take those things seriously. Is this white man idea of governance and how people manage themselves. And you see it in hurricane. You see when hurricane happens, you see everybody in a community just work together and everything just work without no government. Everybody help each other and so on. Now, disaster seems to bring out the best in people. But I totally get what you're saying. I'm also not maybe the best person because I'm trapped in this little place. So I am not. I went to the United States, 2 years ago. I'm not that run trains and been on highways and all of that shit. I was stunned by how busy it was, And then when I see these cities in Africa, you know about millions and millions of people. So I get your point. But even to those levels, I think we need to put the brakes on European evolved, like even development. What is development? We've all developed, but look at any other word that is prefixed with D. It's negative. Devolve, devil, destroy. So we have devolved. We need to evolve. So I don't want to follow the development pattern at all. That's my problem. It's not that I see the nice things that's created and this and that, but dude, I don't know how good roads are. You know what damage roads have done to create for vehicles? I may be going in the more what they would call far left, but there's real critiques about how much damage roads have done. So I'm just saying that we have to give the difference we bring. We didn't bring, this is coming up by your generation. Our generation said, leave them man alone. Them man smell bad. We're going to go by ourselves. It wasn't that they were going to want to live poor, but they recognized the only way they could be the true new man was to separate themselves. And I'm suggesting that that's becoming more and more important. as I see man beings seem to be more sucked into society, and I think so. I wanted to bring that to your community, coming from where I am, and certainly respecting that, you know, you're maybe in the United States, and the busyness and the volume of things just makes what I'm saying, oh, that's just nonsense, man. That can't work. But you'll find there's some excellent small communes throughout the states that are working quite well. Groups. I think that's the future. I don't think everybody can have a car. So generally, Rasta's view of small web-like communities where 2 or 3 families share a car and share a lot of things. Do you know if you have a vehicle, you use it on average 20% of the time you own it? So I totally get your point, Kwasi, and I feel it. But I also think that my point is something that comes from an essence of Rasta, and being from the point where I am and seeing where I have reached in my life, even professionally, and recognizing that, what was this all about, Alfie? What did I helped people, I did that, but really, what did I leave about Rasta? I helped, but if I'd created a community, I would have left a example, again, not of Rasta, but of what man can do, thinking like this. So it's the balance. You're totally balanced, but I want to make clear that this side of the balance is properly represented, because I think we're forgetting this side for our needs to get comfort and to have, and it's a valid need. We've been living in discomfort for some time now, and, there is something to be said about that. And to tell you the truth, that's why probably on a deep level, I haven't been there, because it's not a soft a life as this is.
Yes.
To be honest, I mean, I can't. I have to confront that all the time.
Yes. I speak as a virgin who was back and forth to the continent, purchased land in Ghana. I'm in that process of relocating there.
Okay.
And what I say, and I don't think we really have a difference of opinion. Because what I'm saying is that both are important, and I think that's what the eye is saying, but not to forget the essence. And I agree 1,000%. I think agriculture has to be the basis of our community. We have to start with the land, and our stewardship of the land cannot follow the monoculture kind of destructive Babylon model, profit-driven model. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think I agree with the 1,000% on that. What I'm saying, and what I'm saying to the youths, because I'm also a brethren that has come out of my pocket to help a lot of elders into the system. I've also reasoned with the children of those elders, and I know that the pain and the the consequence of them having to live in the bush. And a lot of people don't know that seclusion for the most part was caused because of persecution, police and things. It wasn't, it was out of necessity,
right.
These things. So my example always starts with His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I, and I give thanks for the elders that, raised I here in Washington, D.C. They always pointed I to Kadamari Haile Selassie I. And what we realize by studying the teachings of His Majesty is that we have not fulfilled the vision. The elders held it under the persecution. Remember, it's war, So Leonard Howell builds Pinnacle. There's a ganja raid. The movement is scattered to the Dongle, to Bakawal, to all of these places. We don't recover our wealth from that time. We're persecuted across the Caribbean, across Africa. We are now just starting to come out of that persecution through the cultural power of the movement. As you said, we have been able to now start slowly to come out. We still have fights. They're still locking up man for ganja in the islands, documenting that here. So the fight is still there, but we are winning the victories. We're winning in the court of public opinion. But now, in terms of the economic foundation that is necessary for us to manifest and build the reality that we want to see. That is where we are in the movement. And what I'm calling my brethren out there is to be productive. There's also a lot of brethren out there who are not being productive, and they're just out there not fulfilling their full vision, and this is destroying a lot of our families. I speak to the sister in them, and there's a massive problem that we have, because, and a lot of it comes from, when the ganja money was flowing, things were all right. When that dried up now, there was no alternative where enough of the man that was hustling was dealing with. So we're in this cycle. So I want the audience to know, when I reason is because being on the front line globally, listening to stories, representing family, hearing the stories as an attorney. And I know as an attorney, you hear the stories that people are not going to share with everyone else.
Right.
You hear the pain and the other side of it. So this is why we're saying that we have to have our own schools. But to have a school, you have to be able to pay a staff. There's no volunteer school going to happen that's going to run off of good vibration and you just there because Rastafari live and reign. That is not going to happen. And that has already happened in the past, because we have examples of schools that rose, but they couldn't continue because the economic part was not sorted. So I don't want people to feel like this is a city ras and no, we know the reality of building, of nation building. This is why I'm doing things like Rastafari and STEM and finding Rastafari engineers, and because development is capital intensive. His Majesty went through this, and this is why I'm telling the family, yes, the elders were great, but we have to look to His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I first. Right now is Gideon. We don't have no time for make no mistake. You know what I mean? The elders, they won a great victory in terms of the integrity, but it was at great cost. Don't bother feel like wasn't at great cost. Most of them died impoverished. A lot of them died, their families broken, and their stories, you know what I mean, because of they didn't have time for the family. They were just treading Rastafari, you know what I mean? They were just fighting the battle and going to jail, in and out of jail, you know what I mean, going to Bingi, holding up the integrity of the movement. And the youths them were not dealt with, and there's a lot of resentment. We lost a whole generation of Rastafari youths that are ballad, that are just out there, and they don't feel very good about the movement because of what they experience as children. So I just want us to have that balance.
And that's very true. That's true for that's very true for me.
Yes.
That's a dynamic with me. I certainly could be a lot more successful, and I look back at that and say, and I was caught in that same vibe, and but I at the same time it has been just like the elders and you're pointing out, has been inspirational, but there is that practical element. I totally agree. I cannot more agree with you because I'm right there. But what I am recognizing, if that practical thing is not built upon those elders, and although they didn't do it, but on those principles that were so sacrosanct, we will find ourselves, worse off. And as much as and I'm a follower of His Majesty, I understand I've read His Majesty's works through and through, and I understand his development posture of how much he was seen to be totally opposite of how we are seen as backward and looking for things. He was seen as the total opposite. You want to change our ways and you want to be modern, and he fought that battle continually through his career.
Yes.
I just came on, to represent from where I am from in terms of Dominica and that element, because and looking at the wider way, and I'm really looking, I would prefer a future of teaching in Africa, the youth, than a future of living in the hills in Dominica, right? But if that Africa can't work, then it's thing. But I'm saying that I'm saying that that force that we're talking about doing those things is in Africa. It really is.
Yes,
We're not
yes.
talking about economically because we can see that the powers that be in the societies that we were here are such that, you know, so I totally agree with you, but I hope your whole program is creating that is to move people to Africa to be
Yes,
able to, because that's where we're going to get economic power.
that
It's
is
not
it.
going to come here. It's
That
not
is
going to
it.
come on this side, especially now. They've locked that off.
Yes, my elder. That is why I told you, we're back and forth to the continent.
Well, that's
We
very good.
we are about that repatriation. I'm actually going to be in Ghana later this year filming, providing some exclusive content for the Lion Pride globally. Repatriation is a must, and as the elder said, every pillar. And the elders were advocating education. The elders that I know, they were
Absolutely.
advocating modern, in terms of just everything that I'm talking about. The elders were advocating as well, because
Yeah.
they went through. A lot of people get into the romanticism and not aware of what is before us. Those of us with children, we realize how crucial it is if we don't build for them. And his majesty says this in speeches: if you don't prepare for them, then generations will, you will be a disgrace to future generations. So we have work to do, and I give thanks for ones like the I, guiding us, making sure that we keep that integrity, holding us accountable as youths, because you were able to really experience those elders and live, that livity. So we are guided by the item, and we look to really work hand in hand. And again, I keep stressing on this platform, unity does not mean uniformity. We don't all have to be the same thing. We can agree to disagree, and we can still find the areas of common, because most things we are going to agree on, and we find, even one or two things to agree on, and we move on those things. You know what I mean? We don't need to spend a lot of time talking about what we don't agree on, and wasting time, because the Armageddon is real. Babylon is falling, as the brethren say. The collapse of the global supply chain is not if, is when, because they are coming with a global reset, and we're not gonna like that reset if we have to depend on government. And most ones today are dependent in some way on these governments. We don't have our sovereign system. We have sovereign as a word sound, but we have to actually build that system, including supply chain, meaning how does it get from the farm to your table? That's a whole supply chain that has to be mapped out. People have to be employed along that chain, from the truck drivers to the logistics person to the farmer who's planting the seed to the person who's owning the grocery store, the retail. This is not no plaything that we have to build. And everybody has a role. The Itral man can make money by foraging while harvesting in the hills. We can turn that into wildcraft and put a brand on that, and that has value. And them man, they can just stay up in the hills and Itral farming. We have to create these systems. We have to own the intellectual property that is created by these systems. And until we do that, then we are at the whim of these, because everybody go and burn a hot fire and then go to the local grocery store to buy their grocery. And that don't make no sense to I. So we have to understand how to run a business, how to keep it viable. That doesn't mean that I and I are capitalists. Africa invented commerce and trade. There's nothing more ancient than trade. We've always had economy running on the continent. That's not a Western concept. They learned that from I. They learned that from I and I, because we were the first traders. We were the first sailors, import, export business. We were doing all of that. We were taking goods to China back in BC, from BC, from the east coast of Africa. So we're not new to this, However, we have to change how we think as Rastafari people, and we have to get serious, especially the brethren them, because the brethren them are underachieving economically right now. And right now, there are so many tools for us to be able to learn and to increase what we're doing. So, but I can go all night. I really give thanks for the eye. We already gone 2 hours. It flies when you have a legendary guest. This is just part one. I'm hoping that I will be a regular contributor to the platform. We definitely are going to be working together on a legal front because we do have a legal foundation of attorneys, and I'm inviting the brethren to come and join us. So we definitely will be working more closely together behind the scenes. Again, this is one of the elders that inspired and I first heard about the I through Ras Miguel Lauren, who spoke very highly of the I and always saying we need to reach out to this brethren. So this was one of the names from I was in law school that inspired I, that has been doing the work. We're having a lively reasoning, but don't feel like we're disagreeing. We're
No, at all.
Yeah, we are synergizing.
It's a crystal eye. There's all kind of sides. That's why I say it's I and I. It's not we. It's not one blob. It's I and I. It's individual attitudes within a oneness of a concept. And so I give thanks for this opportunity. Yes, I hope there is certainly there's issues around Dominica. Now, getting into a wider issue, this is something, again, as I say, why Dominica is such a great model, because I have worked it out. Using Dominica as the model of how to do these logistics, how it can work, where are the value chains that you can create in agriculture, how can you deal with it? We have markets in Martinique. I mean, if they made me king of Dominica, I would show them how to do it. But the difficulty of getting politically elected, I've had Ruzi. I was one of the main campaign people for Ruzi Douglas when he got elected.
Yes.
Before he was killed,
legend,
I think.
Yes, legend, Pan-Africanism.
Ruzi Douglas, who was a noted Pan-African, very close to Gaddafi. And so I am very aware of what you're talking about on the bigger picture. That is something that, as I say, that I think the more community we develop among ourselves, then it's essentially going to just have an impact on whatever the community is around it, because it just will do that. Just like Pinnacle had the impact among the community all around it. So I give thanks for what the I is saying, and I encourage all the young listeners to look to Africa. It is the future. Those of you in the big countries, you have to consider yourself there and how it will be able to sustain you over time. So anyway, give thanks for this opportunity, and for all the listeners that have taken their time to share with us. I give thanks to you for listening. Ras Tafari, live it and reign it.
First, do you love what you heard today, family? Let me know in the comments. Share this one. This is a legendary episode of the Lion Talk live show. This is what my vision was, bringing this to YouTube platform, high level Rastafari reasoning. This is how I was grounded in the movement. I would go to the Naya Bingi house. You never knew who would be there, but you were guaranteed to have a high level Rastafari reasoning. These were scholars of the highest degree from the University of Adversity. And I was one of the pupils. I was going to actual university at the time, but these elders knew more than my professors and could articulate themselves, at a level that I had never seen prior to. And what I realized is that we were missing that. All I was seeing was stuff about artists, and, the movement was getting watered down. The youths, them were not being exposed to elders like the I self, Now, a little child in Zambia can watch this episode and be blessed with the I wisdom. A little child growing up in Sierra Leone or Kenya now is accessing an elder from Dominica through the Lion Voice Network. So this was the vision that we had. And this is only phase one of our vision. If you want to support the channel, join our Patreon, $5, $10 a month. We're building something on a crowdfunding model because we don't want to have to depend on sponsorship. And the only way you can really be independent is when your audience is the one that's funding you. You know what I mean? If you depend on sponsors, then when they cut the check, they got talk because you have staff and you have people to pay and people livelihood and you have to think about all these things. But when you have 1,000 people giving you $10 a month, now you have some security. And that's what we're building here. So if you want to join us, we do have town hall meetings. We are going to be sponsoring Rastafari events. We are going to be building some of the institutions that we talk about. This is not just a talk shop, family. We are building, we are making the history. I'm an actionist, so I can't sit down and just reason theoretically. That's not what attracted I to Rastafari. I was attracted by the livity, the realness, you know. I was attracted by, doesn't matter if you see Haile Selassie's divinity. All I have to do is get you to accept the history, and I'm fine. You know what I mean? Because it's the glory is there, it's documented. So I don't need to argue with nobody about divinity. He is the King of Kings and the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah. That's a historical fact. So I'm good. So we are here building something special, family. And again, we have elders like this. We are planning a special episode. I can't say who the special guest may be because it's not confirmed yet, but we may have a massive surprise family in the next coming strongs. We are working. This is Ras Tafari month. July, we are calling this month Ras Tafari month here on the Lion Voice Network. So if you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe to the platform. Make sure you spread the word. We are nearing 44,000 subscribers. We are the fastest growing Rastafari platform on the planet because of the item. And we are going to continue to bring the lion story to the masses. Why? Because the time has come for the lions to tell our own story. And this is the lion's voice.
This is Warrior King, and the time has come for the lions and the lioness to tell their own story. This is the lion's voice. Give thanks and praise for the wonderful blessing that's been poured on me. Give thanks and praise. Jah use I as an instrument to set the people free. Jah give her the powers to chant. Jah give her the powers to chant. Rastafari, the lion's voice.
What are you waiting for? Come together, calling from near and far. Know who you are. What are you waiting for? Rally up, it takes the dust. What are you waiting for? Ancestors paved the way for us. Yes, I am Ketis Oyonde, asking, what are you waiting for to come together? The time has come for the lions to tell our own story. This is the lion's voice.
Yes, job people, this is Michael Shemai representing. I will say, hear the lion voice, saying it is time for the lions and the lionesses to tell their own story. King David killed Goliath with a stone, we original dread.
The time has come for the lioness to tell her own story.
Yeah, now the time has come for the lion to tell his own story. Yeah, the one them called Celestial I represent for the mighty lion voice. And this a shook up your planet tectonic. As me sip up my roots and tectonic. And you can't make me jump nor get panic. Have the engine a run like mechanic. Room.
The time has come for lions to tell I own story. Yes, you're listening to Lion's Voice. I is Dejazmatch hailing from the island of St. Croix. Yeah, I'm bringing to your Rastafari vibes. Can you feel it? Rastafari. Babylon born when Rasta come together. Can you feel it? Rastafari. Because Babylon done when I and I come together. Look how we live together, look how we work together, Oh, Babylon done when Rasta come together. Haile, Rastafari, His Majesty and Empress men and blessed. Yeah man, Haile from Ras Kasata Shillingford.
Aye.
The fittest of the fittest shall survive. My people, open your eyes. Wake up. Blessed love, this is Queen Omega, representing for all lions and lionesses. With the lion's voice, we come to tell our story. Rastafari, live it. Hey, the lion's voice, Rastafari.
Yo, this is Zelle, representing for Ras Kasata and the whole lion voice family. Now listen this is the realest thing. Him closer to me than a brother. Him a me G, me a tell him I'm a lion. Me a go tell you how me feel, me a go keep it real. Me nah go wait till him lay down on the mark. Lion voice never talk bad about me yet. Him realness me can't forget. Cause when a game time him never bench me, him never rise up against me yet. No, the friendship connect. It's funny how we can talk in front of a million people and never yet drop no catch. So a loyalty till death. Lion voice, and Selassie representing. Up.
Amina, the time has come for the lioness to tell our own story. No surrender, no retreat, we are Jaja soldier. Rougher than the streets, tougher than a boulder. Bigging up Lamb's voice. Now put it, I jolly for say that.
Greetings, this is Ras Shiloh. The time has come for the lions to tell their own story. See? This is the lion's voice. Keep it locked, right here, sir. Ras Shiloh said that. Are you satisfied? Wipe those tears from your eyes. I'm all alone, still you thought I was telling a lie. This is the lion's voice. Keep it locked, right here, sir.
I will never stop, hail the Most High, and I will never stop, call Rastafari. Blessed love, this is Cushite representing for the Lion's Voice. We are here to tell our own story, Rastafari.
Yeah, David Dread of Steel Pulse, and I'm saying hail to the lion voice because it's time that the lion have its voice, have its own story. Says I'm stepping out here. Hear me now. Yeah, the lion's voice. Raw.
Lion voice, tell them that's the people first choice. Lion voice, make the lioness them feel nice. Lion voice, with the lion cubs we sacrifice. Lion voice, got to show the people them the life. Lion voice.